Ever wonder how the gears of government really turn, and how an agency with a name like the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, right,
Yeah.
can actually send ripples through something as vital as education?
It's a really good question. We've been looking at some fascinating analysis recently.
Yeah, analysis that really shines a light on that exact point. Terminated contracts at the U.S. Department of Education, specifically by DOGE.
And it looks like quite a significant shift, potentially impacting how resources flow, to schools and also the vendors who support them.
Right. So for this deep dive, we're looking closely at info compiled and analyzed by EdWeek Market Brief.
Yeah, they've given us a really focused view, which is helpful. It cuts through a lot of the noise you might otherwise get.
Absolutely. So our goal here is really to get to the heart of these contract cancellations. We parts of the education department are feeling this the most.
And what could it actually mean for people listening, whether they're, directly involved in education day to day or just interested in how government policy is shaping this whole area?
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. What's the context here? What led to all this?
Well, according to the EdWeek Market Brief reporting, a key piece of context is the Trump administration's stated aim to sort of streamline and reduce the size of the Department of Education.
Okay.
And DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency, that's the body tasked with actually making those reductions happen.
Right.
And it seems a primary tool they've used is the rather abrupt termination of existing contracts.
Abrupt. And the speed and scale of these cancellations seem to be raising some eyebrows, maybe.
Definitely.
It's not just about cutting costs, is it? There's a concern that this approach could have some real long-term downsides for K-12 education.
That's the worry, yes. EdWeek Market Brief specifically highlights the potential impact on the Institute of Education Sciences, or IES.
IES. Now, for anyone who isn't, steeped in education policy day in, day out, what exactly is IES? Why is hitting them potentially so significant?
That's a really important question. IES is essentially the research arm of the U.S. Department of Education.
Okay. The research arm.
Yeah, think of it as the government's main hub for funding and conducting rigorous research into education. What works, what doesn't.
Got it.
It oversees a lot of crucial, long-standing initiatives, things aimed at understanding what's effective and providing, an evidence base for policy and classroom practice.
So if DOGE's cuts are heavily targeting IES, well, it naturally raises concerns about the future of that whole evidence-based approach at the federal level, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's a bit like cutting the R&D budget in any major industry. You potentially lose that foundation for future development.
Right. And one of those long-standing initiatives that EdWeek Market Brief points to is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, or NAEP. We hear about NAEP quite a bit. Why is that such a critical program?
Well, NAEP is often called the nation's report card. It's this nationwide assessment. It measures what students across the country know and can do in different subjects, math, reading, science, etc.
So it gives us that big picture view.
Precisely. It provides really invaluable data on trends in student achievement over time. It helps pinpoint areas where maybe progress is being made, or conversely, where more attention might be needed.
So it's a key tool for just understanding the health of the education system overall.
Absolutely. So if the contracts supporting NAEP are affected, well, our ability to effectively monitor student performance nationwide could be weakened. Potentially quite significantly.
That makes perfect sense. You're sort of losing a vital diagnostic tool for the whole country.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the impact isn't just limited to IES, is it?
No, not at all.
EdWeek Market Brief's analysis suggests these contract cuts are reaching into other parts of the Department of Education, too.
Absolutely. The scope appears to be quite broad. EdWeek Market Brief's findings indicate potential impacts on the oversight of federal student aid.
Federal student aid. Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's huge.
It is. That's the system providing loans and grants for higher education. So any disruption there could have pretty big consequences for college access.
Sure.
They also found cuts affecting support for the Migrant Student Information Exchange.
What's that?
That's a system that helps ensure, the smooth transfer of educational records for students who move between states. Really crucial for continuity in their learning.
Okay, that makes sense. And it even touches on the department's tech side. EdWeek Market Brief mentioned a digital tool used by the Office of the Chief Information Officer.
Yes, that's right. A tool they use to analyze data from the National Center for Education Statistics.
NCES data. So that sounds like a pretty fundamental tool for just understanding educational trends, making informed decisions.
It really is. The Office of the Chief Information Officer, the OCIO, they're responsible for the department's IT systems, data management.
Right.
So if a tool they use to analyze critical education stats is impacted by contract cuts, it could hinder their ability to provide timely, accurate data for policymakers, for educators, everyone.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these aren't just abstract cuts, are they? They affect the actual resources that school districts, vendors, everyone relies on.
That's the point. They use this national data, the guidelines, the research findings to develop and select effective educational products, different strategies.
So when those underpinnings get destabilized,
Exactly. The potential for negative consequences just ripples through the whole education sector.
and it's not just about programs and data either.
Yeah.
As EdWeek Market Brief points out, there are real human consequences here.
Yes, definitely. Some of the organizations whose contracts have been terminated are apparently facing layoffs or furloughs.
That's a tangible impact. People's livelihoods, expertise may be lost to the field.
It really underscores the potentially disruptive nature of these abrupt cancellations. And what's quite striking is just the sheer number of organizations involved.
How many are we talking about?
Well, as of April 11th, 2025, EdWeek Market Brief's analysis reported that 52 organizations had contracts canceled, just with the department's research arm, IES.
52, just for IES. Wow, that's a significant number of groups whose work is suddenly in question.
It really is.
And EdWeek Market Brief actually dug into which specific offices within the Department of Education have been targeted.
Yes, they did. According to their review of the DOGE reported cancellations, the terminations span across several key areas.
Like what?
Well, we've mentioned IES, the research arm, and the Office of the Chief Information Officer, OCIO.
Right, the IT and data people.
But the impact also extends to federal student aid, which we talked about.
Yeah.
The Office of Finance and Operations, they handle the department's financial management.
Okay.
The Office of Post-Secondary Education, and even the Office of the General Counsel.
The lawyers. So even legal services and advice are being affected.
Apparently so. It suggests a very wide reach for these cuts.
And just to put that in context, EdWeek Market Brief reminds us the Department of Education has, what, 17 different offices in total?
That's right, 17.
So seeing contract terminations across so many of them,
Yeah.
IES, OCIO, FSA, finance, post-secondary ed, even the General Counsel's office, it really paints a picture of a widespread effort to reduce the department's external work.
It really does. And it naturally raises questions about the capacity of the remaining staff, doesn't it? Can they handle everything without that external support?
Good point. But getting a clear picture of the true scale of these cuts, the potential savings, that's proving tricky, isn't it?
Very tricky. EdWeek Market Brief highlights some real challenges in getting a transparent view of the financial impact.
Yeah, DOGE's method of announcing these things seems, less than straightforward.
Passing, putting it mildly, maybe. They issue these rapid notices, and their Wall of Receipts webpage, which is supposed to showcase the savings, has faced criticism.
Criticism for what?
Well, as EdWeek Market Brief found, for being incomplete and, in some cases, just inaccurate in its initial reporting.
Inaccurate how?
Get this. EdWeek Market Brief actually found cases where the reported savings from killing a contract exceeded the total stated value of that contract in the first place.
Wait, what? How does that even work? The savings were more than the contract was worth.
Exactly. These kinds of inconsistencies make it incredibly difficult, to get a reliable handle on the actual financial implications.
It certainly does. It kind of erodes confidence in the data they're putting out there.
And it gets worse. EdWeek Market Brief also points out that the total savings listed by DOGE as of March 5th didn't even match up with the $881 million in claimed savings that DOGE had boasted about in a post on X back in February.
So their own numbers don't align. That's a pretty significant gap.
It really underscores the difficulty in independently verifying any of these savings claims.
Okay, so the money part is murky. But beyond the finances, there are also some significant legal questions swirling around, right?
Yes. EdWeek Market Brief points that out, too. Some of these contracts were apparently established because of specific congressional mandates.
Mandates, meaning Congress basically ordered the department to do this work.
Or at least made direct requests for it, yes.
So the administration just unilaterally terminating contracts that were essentially mandated by Congress that could potentially open the door to legal challenges. or at least raise serious questions about executive authority here.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
Definitely.
And looking ahead, there's just a lot of uncertainty now. EdWeek Market Brief's reporting suggests it's really unclear if any of these contracts might be reinstated later, if priorities shift or programs get revived somehow.
So what happens to the organizations that lost the contracts?
Well, it seems like they anticipate needing to go through a whole rebidding process for any similar work that might pop up down the line.
Which, of course, just creates more instability for them, could disrupt ongoing projects, maybe leaves valuable expertise along the way.
Okay.
So given all these challenges with DOGE's own data, the inconsistencies, how did EdWeek Market Brief manage to piece together such a detailed picture of these cancellations? What was their method?
Well, their methodology, as they described it, seems quite rigorous. They essentially cross-reference the list of canceled ed department contracts that DOGE published on its wall of receipts.
Okay.
They cross-reference that with information from the Federal Procurement Data System. That's a public database of government contracts.
FPDS.
And also with a pre-existing list of active IES contracts they already had.
Ah, okay. So comparing multiple lists to try and verify things.
Pretty much. That allowed them to identify which specific office within the Department of Education was overseeing each particular agreement that got cut.
Sounds like a significant effort to have some much-needed clarity to what seems like a somewhat murky situation.
I think so. And it's important to remember, as EdWeek Market Brief itself points out, even DOGE admits their public listings of these cancellations are only partial.
Right, they might not even be complete.
And there can be delays in updating them. Plus, and this is crucial, the total contract values and the reported savings that EdWeek Market Brief discusses. Those are based on the figures provided by DOGE.
Okay, so EdWeek Market Brief didn't independently verify the dollar amounts themselves. They're reporting what DOGE claimed.
Exactly. That's a really key point to keep in mind. It just highlights the inherent difficulty in getting a totally comprehensive, independently validated view right now.
Still, the information they have compiled seems to offer a really valuable, detailed snapshot of what's happening on the ground.
I agree. It's the best picture we seem to have at the moment.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's try to bring it all together. What would you say is the core takeaway from this deep dive into EdWeek Market Brief's analysis? What's the bottom line?
I think the central takeaway is this. A significant and pretty widespread number of contracts across various key offices in the Department of Education have been abruptly terminated by this Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE.
Okay, widespread and abrupt.
And this action is raising, substantial concerns about the potential long-term impact. Impact on federal educational research, on the collection and analysis of crucial national education data, and just on the level of support available for essential services across the whole education sector.
And as we've discussed, the full extent, the ultimate consequences, that's still somewhat unclear, isn't it? Because of the inconsistencies in the reported data and these sort of unresolved legal questions hanging over some of the cancellations.
Precisely. Which kind of leads us to a final thought, maybe something for listeners to consider.
Okay.
What might be the lasting effects of these abrupt contract terminations, on the quality of educational resources that actually reach schools? How could this impact the availability of reliable national data that we use to inform policy and practice?
Right. What happens when that data stream gets disrupted?
And maybe more broadly, what does this whole shift really signify about the changing priorities in federal education policy? What are the implications for students, for educators, for the education industry?
It's definitely a situation that seems to be evolving. And understanding these initial moves by DOGE feels like a critical first step in figuring out the landscape ahead.
Absolutely. Lots to keep an eye on.